Hi everyone, my name is Alex and this is my disorderly literary channel. And today we will focus on the disorderliness of letting go. And I do a lot of letting go. Each time I finish a book, I need to let it go in order to start another one. And I always want to start another one. Maybe the constant back and forth keeps me away from my own fictional grief. So recently, I've been letting go of the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist. And the winner is announced today, actually, as the video is getting published, so do let me know what your thoughts are below. And I could not help but notice a thematic pattern. The way I see it, every book from the shortlist presents some kind of letting go. Its reasons, its repercussions, its good and bad sides. Not to mention, since this is a women's prize, a long history of women needing to let go of their identities, desires, agency. Basically, womanhood is in many ways linked to some kind of loss. So to get organized, in these books from the shortlist, I noticed 3 types of letting go. 1, letting go of a world. 2, letting go or not letting go of another person. And 3, letting go of yourself and or your past. I don't think anyone else came up with that distinction yet, so if you want to see if that will be a success or a complete disaster, then stick around. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke is a fantasy-adjacent book. By that I mean it does not read like fantasy. And it is about someone called Piranesi who lives in this very strange, as he refers to it, house, surrounded by waves and statues, and he keeps making notes of everything, acknowledging the house's terrifying beauty. But of course, the space he's in carries many secrets. And at some point, the character is forced to make a decision to let go of the world he's familiarized with, or not. And there are both good and bad reasons to leave a world that you have all to yourself. It's safe, it's familiar, it's calm, it's yours. It takes a great deal of trust to leave a world that is familiar to you. If you are very much in your bubble of a world and you're put there by yourself or someone else, and someone then tells you to go out to a better world or the real world, it takes trust to listen to them. We also change ourselves when we change our world, which means we automatically need to shed our skins when we leave. And that is always uncomfortable. But at the same time, if you let yourself change your world multiple times even, then you yourself can actually become richer for it. It's scary and uncertain and sometimes tragic, but you're always in enriched company, so to speak. I'm not the one for objective or definitive morals or purposes of a book, and this novel can be read in many different ways, but I think it definitely represents this sense of disorientation when yourself is not the only one, when your world is not the only one, and how letting go of any of these in order to expand your world is scary. No One is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood is a very different kind of book. It is, in short, a very fragmented depiction of an online consciousness, which is also quite fragmented. It's somewhat based on the author's own viral tweet from some years ago, and it's about a character who rises to fame on social media and now belongs to this strange world where unintelligible things pile up. A world which you both do and very much do not belong to. Because how can you really grasp the virtual space? And eventually the real world calls her back in, and she needs to let go. And I don't think everyone is going to appreciate this book. It's basically split into 2 sections, the virtual one and the real one, both kind of distant from the reader, both rather confusing and frightened. I think it beautifully portrays the fragility of any space. After all, when the real world gives us nothing but disease and death, isn't it tempting to slip into the online world where everything is an imitation of itself anyway? And yet, there's so much beauty to the real world. So I wouldn't say this is an anti-social media novel, far from it, but it does make you question what exactly it is that you seek when you visit the virtual space, and how much you need to pay for it, and what could happen if you chose to let go of it. Now, I'm going to force you to face your disorderly self, so brace yourself. Why are you here in this space, in this video? But watch the video until the end first and then reflect. When the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Cherry Jones is on the one hand a very evocative and moving book, but on the other the language could have been a bit too meandering in a way that made me feel muddled and not always engaged. And also, if you're triggered by the depiction of physical abuse, then this might not be for you, so I'm just putting it out there. The book takes place in Baxter Beach, Barbados, and tells the story of a few women, mostly over the span of a few months in 1984, but it also travels back in time. And what links all of these women's stories is the cycle of violence and poverty. Even those violent to others are shown to be, first and foremost, oppressed by violence themselves. My most intuitive and visceral impression of the book is that there is this constant sound of waves and the wind until there inevitably comes a gunshot or a scream. So it seems as though there exists nothing but the silence and the storm. No room for anything else other than that tension. It is a rather bleak novel in many ways, and there is a perpetual sense of powerlessness of women who feel like they cannot afford real, good love. And even if one experiences love, it seems to be at the wrong time. But as I want to circle it back to the theme, Jones's novel also shows how sometimes loving someone is not about being there for them, but rather about letting go of them by giving someone freedom. At one point, though I won't give anything specific away, a character who's in love with a woman helps her escape. And by that, he lets go of her and of ever having a chance with her. And in this case, love is about letting go of someone so that they can escape that toxic cycle. So yeah, the old cliche, you love something, you let it go. And really, it's not as much of a cliche as we think it is because it's just so damn hard to do. We humans are clingy and stubborn and proud, and we often subconsciously think active love conquers all. So we rarely know how or when to really let go. Though sometimes we should. So let's move on. Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller might just be my favorite book on the shortlist. I absolutely love this book, maybe because I related to the character in many ways. I do have a theory that she's autistic, like me, but I do have to take into consideration her background, which plays a big role in the story, so I'm not really sure. But I do love diagnosing characters as autistic, so let's just roll with it. The book is about Jeannie and Julius, 51-year-old twins who have lived with her mother, Dot, their entire lives. Their father died when they were 12, and the book begins with the death of their mother, Dot. And what follows is a whirlwind of secrets and losses. They lose their money and house, they lose their patience and faith in each other and other people, but that's not really the loss I want to talk about. At some point late in the book, we find out about a secret that might explain the twins' entire life. And Jeannie has never realized her potential. She's never gone to college or worked because she was told that for a certain reason she couldn't. And then it turns out it was a lie. So she begins to wonder, how would her life turn out if her mother did let her go, let her live? Maybe she would have learned to read. Maybe she would have become a musician. Maybe she would have gone to university. Unfortunately, we often become who others think we are or who others convince us we are. And this book reminds us of how sometimes we need to let go of those we love for them to be able to realize themselves, to discover what it is they want and who they are. And it is hard to treat people very close to us as separate entities, sometimes. We might pretend that it isn't, but it is. And essentially what the book shows us is that we need to pay a price for holding ourselves back, and we need to pay a price for holding others back. And also, inevitably, we often need to pay a price unfairly for being a product of a system that made us poor or helpless or discriminated against, so how to break the cycle. Well, I think it's about time for the third type of letting go at this point. Transcendent Kingdom by Yagyasi. This is a beautiful and subtle book about a woman called Gifty who studies neuroscience at Stanford University and who, well, at some point ran away from her past. She let go of her religion in favor of science, and she wanted to escape the ghosts of her past. Her father leaving his family for his homeland in Ghana, his brother dying due to drug addiction, her mother's depression, as well as a constant sense of alienation and inadequacy, since she grew up in the only Black family in a predominantly white church in Alabama. But in the present of the book, when her mom visits her in a very low mental state, it is hard for her not to have to face her past and herself again. And she tries, but she can never fully escape. Even in her university research, she's looking at rats and addiction, and she's pretending it has nothing to do with her personal life, but it has everything to do with it, with her family's history, her mom, her brother. So even when she consciously tries to pull away from her past, she's subconsciously drawn to it through her research on addiction and mental illness. And there is a line in the book early on that there used to be 4 of us, then 3, then 2, and when my mom goes, there will only be 1. So there's this sense of letting go of people which naturally happens in life, but in Gifty's case, it is clearly premature. So she thinks that if she lets go first of her past herself, then there won't be any more losses. But that's not really how life works. And I also might say that she chooses science over religion because the former is seemingly more cold and factual, whereas the latter inevitably contains emotions, and she tries to escape feeling because she can't stand any more losses. But again, not how life works. So if that book tells us anything, it's that we can never fully let go of our past, of ourselves, of our history, even our trauma. We do need to find a way to take them with us wherever we go, even if we do develop new stories and identities along the way, even if we do heal along the way. And I know this sounds like a cliche, self-helpy kind of lesson that we're all sick of at this point, but the novel itself is far from being a cliche self-helpy book, so I do highly recommend it. The last book of the shortlist is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, and even the title itself suggests to us that it is about letting go of some kind. It is about 2 twins, Desiree and Stella, living in a Southern American town where only light-skinned Black people live. And at some point, they both run away together, and then they split. One of them eventually comes back to the town with a daughter, escaping from an abusive husband, while the other one passes for white, and even her white husband and child don't know that she's Black. And then the novel also moves on to include their children's stories. So this book is quite explicitly about letting go of yourself and your past. Every character does it. And it can either be very good and healing or destructive. So Stella, who passes for white, never feels like she belongs. And she's never truly happy because she completely rejected her past, her history. On the other hand, Desiree leaves her abusive husband and comes back to the town to live with her mother. And in her case, letting go and coming back is actually healing. And there are so many other characters who let go of their dreams, of their identities in order to survive or be free, or sometimes because they have to. In a way, everything in this book is colored by vanishing. The twins vanishing, an escape door to a new life vanishing, Blackness, identity vanishing, the vanishing of someone's past. And there is a line in the book, the key to staying lost was to never love anything. So I think what we might take from it is that letting go can be good as long as our goal is not to get lost and stay lost. But if we let go, we inevitably let something in too. And how do we know what are we even letting in if we're lost? If we don't know where we are or who we are? And since we're lost, we need to pretend, perform. And ironically enough, Stella's daughter wants to be an actress, so she inherits that performing streak without even knowing it. But she also fails as an actress, so that's suggestive, showing us that passing on performativity is not really a helpful thing to do. So, I think an appropriate conclusion to this very professionally made video essay is that we're human, and we'll always make stupid decisions about ourselves and those around us, and we'll never figure out how to always do the right thing. And the books from the shortlist are, thankfully, not just insipidly cheerful, and they do remind us that we and our lives will always be, to an extent, disorderly, or even disordered if we consider the actual systemic issues at play that affect the characters' lives immensely. But every once in a while, if we read enough books, if we try hard enough, maybe 1% of our decisions will be good enough. Maybe sometimes we'll be able to let go when we should and not when we shouldn't. But since this is a literary cult and I need to indoctrinate you somehow, I invite you to read these books if you think you let go too much or too little, or if you just want some good literature to keep you busy. And if my faux analysis convinced you, then let go of your doubts and stick around so that we can spread disorderliness and literariness all over the world. And let me know if you read any of these books and which one you think might deserve to win the most. I know that since I'm a booktube channel, I need to critically bet on something. I'm not sure, I think Transcendent Kingdom might win, or maybe The Vanishing Half, but my favorite was Unsettled Ground, so I personally think that one should win. The title itself is most applicable to the psyche of yours truly anyway, so even based on that, it's a win. But now, it's time to let go of another thing, this video. So you're free to go. I applaud you for sticking long enough and not letting go early on. Since they're drilling in another apartment again, and I certainly need to be off, I invite you to close your eyes, let go, sit back, and I don't know. Tune into the music.